Welcome back to another episode of Know to Grow, a light to heavy duty podcast. I'm your host, Chandler Kohn. And today I have on Sean Ryan with Point Spring and Driveshaft based out of Pennsylvania. Sean, welcome to the show. Look forward to hopping in a discussion here. And thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Point Spring.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Chandler. It's really nice to be here with you. Point Spring is, typical for the aftermarket for heavy duty on highway parts and service. We have 10 locations, mostly in Pennsylvania, central to western PA. We have 8 stores, and we have 1 store in Ohio, 1 store in West Virginia. We're actually celebrating this year is our 100-year anniversary, which is super exciting. Really proud about that.
Well done.
And I'm third generation, so I'm really hoping that we make it past 100 years and continue on. So, it's a great industry, great company. I love being a part of it.
I love the heavy duty space. Love exactly what you guys are doing. Kudos to getting to 10 locations. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to break past 2, 3, and 4 locations. So very well done. Looks like you're doing very well. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is your expansion strategy, particularly as it relates to real estate. I think you'll have a really good perspective on that. Again, this is a kind of a for CEOs by CEOs podcast, and I've wanted to have the right person come on here to talk about real estate and real estate strategy and so forth. Before we get into that, let's talk about how big is Point Spring from a technician or just employee standpoint, and then let's talk about some of the services you do across your locations.
Sure. So total company wide, we have about 150 employees. Out of our 10 locations, we have 7 that do some sort of service, 3 that are just parts. The service ones go all the way from kind of lesser work, drive shafts, that kind of stuff, to full-blown service. I mean, reframing, pretty much anything on a heavy-duty truck. So we have, in the service side of our business, we probably have across the company, I'd say maybe about 30 technicians. So it's a very important part of our business for sure.
That's impressive. And then are you guys involved in mobile and some of these other different types of services as well?
No, we've never gotten into the mobile space. We partner with people that do it. Same with like towing and wreckers. Like we've never done that, but we have a lot of partners that do that and bring us work. Nothing we've expanded into to this point.
And then a little bit about the timeline. Kind of take a step back. Obviously, it's the 100th year anniversary. That brings you back to 1926. But maybe talk about like from the 80s or something like that. Like the locations you have, and then how you ended up at 10 locations and what that timeline looks like.
Sure. I will go all the way back, but I'll be very brief. So we started in 1926 here in Pittsburgh, where there's the 3 rivers, two that meet and turn into one. And then at that location, they call it the Point. Right now, there's a state park there, but our first location was actually right there at the Point in downtown Pittsburgh. So we were at the Point. We made springs, so we were Point Spring at the time. And then eventually we moved, a little bit further away from downtown. But then, like you said, really from the 80s, we've been acquiring since then. So not only acquiring, but greenfielding. We opened up our Fairmont store back in, I think, 1982, built that from the ground up. My grandfather and my dad were involved. 1997 was our largest acquisition. We bought a company called Brake Drum and Equipment. We had 4 locations. They had 8 locations. So it was a massive undertaking. I wasn't here for that, but, I still hear stories about it. And there's been, a couple handfuls of 1 or 2 location acquisitions over the years as well. It's just always kind of been a part of our strategy.
Excellent. And we'll jump into some more detail on this in a bit. Have you divested anything, or has it just been kind of adding on?
We've never divested. We have had locations close, but we've never sold any locations or any parts of the business.
Okay. And then let's talk about maybe the operations a little bit before we get into some of this kind of the real estate and other things. I guess, are you guys, kind of forward looking on technology and the shop management software to run an efficient operation? What does that look like from your standpoint?
We are not as forward looking as I would like on the shop management side. We do, I'd say, a very good job, just because we've done it for so long. We have people that really don't need shop software. They just kind of get it done. Having said that, I'm sure we could be more efficient, if we were to explore that. And it is on our docket to explore the software side of things more deeply. Right now we run our software, our shop, everything really in our business runs through our business system. We run it on a system called Odoo. And through that, we're able to track, technician efficiency, by technician, by location. So we look at that at least monthly. So I'd say we're kind of right in the middle. We're not cutting edge, and I don't think we're behind the pack either. I'd say we're right in the middle technology wise, and hoping to move closer to the tip of the spear.
Good. And then explain the state of the industry from your perspective. Obviously, last year was kind of a lowering tide. You've had the ongoing freight recession. Vocational demand looks to be there across municipalities and some other sectorial things. But tell us about how you perceive the state of the industry, what you expect 2026 to look like.
So yeah, 2025, industry wise, I'd say our area was pretty much the same as most of the rest of the country. We were fortunate to bring on a couple new salespeople at the beginning of the year that significantly more than made up kind of the market downturn. So we were up a good chunk in 2025 due to those couple sales guys we brought on. So that was a great talent investment in talent. 2026, I think probably everybody would say we have no idea, honestly, and I don't. I do feel optimistic about 2026, though. I was talking to you about the weather before we got on the recording. I think this cold is going to really, really help in the spring. The industry can only stay down for so long. Trucks break, you got to fix them. The stuff has to move eventually. So I'm pretty optimistic. I don't think it'll be a banner year, but I definitely think it'll be, up 5 to 10% would be my best guess.
And that's a lot of what I heard at Heavy Duty Aftermarket Week in Grapevine, Texas, 2 weeks ago. Kind of the same sentiment, especially second half of the year. Hopefully things are going to turn around. So it's good to see that kind of at the localized level and based on who I'm speaking with as well. Did you have any part shortages impact you last year, and how did you handle inventory management?
No, not particularly. I mean, there was a few isolated cases of suppliers running into, specific issues, specific company issues. There's a notable bankruptcy out there that impacted, some of the brands that we bought. But generally speaking, we didn't have any real supply issues. That was pretty much contained to, the year after COVID and maybe the year after that. Since then, it's been pretty much back to normal on the supply side.
Okay, good. So let's talk about some of these acquisitions and how you've approached them. So a lot of times we'll see if a heavy duty brand or shop is going to make acquisitions. Maybe it's one or two, right? And then they integrate them for a year, then maybe go and add another one, and maybe they get really good at it. Add 2 or 3 at one time, but the integration is always the challenge. So for the acquisition in 97, talk to us about the thought kind of behind going and acquiring 8 of those? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, this is all, like I said, secondhand for me, but I've heard a ton of stories about it. We had 4 locations. We were Point Spring and Driveshaft, so we were really a specialist in driveline, suspension, that kind of stuff. Brake drum they were the powerhouse, also in our market for break. They'd break drums, wheel end, that kind of stuff. So it's not like we didn't do anything in that, and they didn't do anything in our market, but we were certainly the leader on our side, and they were the leader in their market. So it really was not only location-wise a great scope, it was also, expanding the line of businesses that, really made us a full line provider to the fleets and to the repair garages. So that was a major contributing factor, I think, to, the desire to want to make that acquisition happen back then.
And that was, nearly 30 years ago now. And I'm sure a lot of, those sites or that business was kind of paper-based, just kind of more simple, kind of blue collar type of work, like, truck breaks and you come in and fix it and you get the part for it. Now things are kind of more horizontally spread, from a digital standpoint across the operation, maybe one treasurer or CFO across the entire operation. And then some of that integration, is much harder nowadays. I feel like. Have you heard anything about what those integration challenges look like in 1997? Maybe compared to how they would look now?
Yeah, again, the secondhand, but I heard from many different people that it was an extraordinarily challenging time. I think it was, and frankly, I even have memories. I was a kid at the time. I was probably 13. My dad was so stressed that it was actually coming home with him. Like it was impacting him that much. It was a massive undertaking, and it was a good 18 months to 2 years of just kind of brute force, right? Just as problems come up, tackling them, constantly making sure that the culture was not going sideways, all that stuff. In addition to, you have locations that are closing, merging. I mean, it was everything you would imagine it would be, and it was difficult.
Yeah. So you've talked about, you guys primarily own the real estate, right? You own the real estate at 9 locations, and then you lease one. From an M&A standpoint, what I do, some of the wealthiest business owners that we see, own their real estate. Tell us a little bit about, Point Springs' strategy around real estate in terms of buying or leasing it. Looks like Ryan is frozen.
Chandler, I'm sorry, it cut out for a second. I didn't hear the question.
All good. I was going to say, you guys own nine locations of real estate. You lease one. Help the listeners understand kind of what that real estate strategy looks like for you. Of course, some of the wealthiest business owners own their own real estate, right? So we'd like to dive into this topic a little bit to understand kind of your approach here.
Sure. I mean, so, I've been with the company 13 years, and, I inherited the real estate portfolio. So, it wasn't an active decision I made. It was a reality that I stepped into, but it's one that I largely have continued. We haven't changed course since I've been sort of in charge here. Like I said, our facility in West Virginia, we built, we bought the piece of land and built it, and we've owned it ever since. It was just kind of how my grandfather and my dad approached the business. And like I said, it served us well. It's given us a lot of flexibility. We don't have to ask permission for anything, right? I mean, if we want to build we have a location up in Troy, Pennsylvania. It's pretty remote. We wanted to add service to that business or that location, and we just built another building, right? So it gives us a ton of flexibility to adjust the real estate to our needs and not kind of be beholden to a landlord or anything like that.
When was that greenfield establishment?
That one, it was actually right around when I started. Troy, we opened 13, 14 years ago. Started with one guy selling almost kind of out of his garage. We leased a building. We leased a larger building with an option to purchase. We purchased the building, and then 5 years after that, we added another shop, and at this point, it's probably in our top 4 largest stores from zero, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And how do you guys think, did you ever consider brownfielding it and kind of converting an industrial building to your purposes, or did it always make sense to kind of build it from scratch?
I don't know. I don't think we've ever taken an industrial building and converted it. Yeah, usually it was either we're buying a business that has either one or many locations that already has their operations, or we did it from scratch on our own.
Makes sense. I totally get it. See where we jump into here now. So when it comes to, like that location, 13 years ago, a lot of times businesses, it's a decision they have to make in terms of, do they want to deploy this cash to the real estate, or do they want to, lease the space and hang on to that cash and deploy it elsewhere? How do you think about, your approach to financing that real estate? Or how would you think about it now, right? If you were to go in and get another location, whether that's greenfield or make an acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe how much things have changed over those years. Back in the day, when my father was running the company, they're very conservative. They always had, in my opinion, excessive amounts of cash. So it wasn't even hard for them to think about. If they found an opportunity they liked, they could pay in cash and still have ample reserves. So it was pretty easy. It wasn't hard for them to be able to justify, making those purchases. We're in a bit of a different situation now. We've done a couple acquisitions. We've done some ownership consolidations that we paid some family members for shares, that kind of thing. So we have a pretty sizable amount of debt now. So it would be a different equation. We've actually kind of even tapped the brakes a little bit on looking at significant investments in new acquisitions. But I figure in 3 or 4 years, we'll be in a position to kind of start looking aggressively again, and we'll definitely do that at that point.
So if we think about, you guys are predominantly in PA with, and then you have one location in Ohio. Tell the listeners about how you guys would approach expansion, in terms of county locations, traffic counts, maybe adjacent tenants. Zoning and expansion can play a big role in auto service. Maybe your parts delivery routes and kind of the proximity there. How do you think about that?
The ideal candidate for us is, we've got a pretty circular area of our footprint. If we find a location or an opportunity that, just kind of expands that footprint just a little bit in one direction, that's really ideal for us. We have our own tractor trailer that runs a loop around to all the different locations every single week to add in one more location that's kind of in the middle or on the fringes of where we already are. It's easy to kind of, operationally integrate that. So that's ideal for us. Another kind of maybe not intuitive thing that we look for is we prefer more rural areas than bigger city areas. If I'm looking at an opportunity in even like a city like Harrisburg, I'm not that excited about. There's so much more competition there. We found, like I said, with Troy, Pennsylvania, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And if you do good work and there's enough people there that need service and need parts, you're the only game in town. So that's appealing for us. If we find a location that's not really, in the center of a major metropolitan area, that's usually a plus for us.
Yeah. Is it along that location, for example, or any of them? I mean, I guess there's some of them probably kind of near major shipping corridors, major highways. Is that the case or not really?
No. I mean, yeah, I don't know how they do it up in Troy, honestly. It's 20 miles south of Elmira, New York. That's the town that maybe people have heard of that it's closest to, but it's not on any major highways. It's kind of up in the mountains, and there's industry up there that drives it. There's some oil and gas stuff up there. It's about an hour north of Williamsport, but yeah, it's just kind of a hidden gem up there.
Yeah, I hear that. And then, in terms of funding growth, in growth, it comes in a variety of ways. I mean, that could be online sales, that could be, breaking into new locations, or, expanding the inventory that you carry. Have you ever considered doing a sale leaseback where, you sell the real estate to somebody, lease it back, and then take that capital and kind of reinvest it into the business for something else?
It's something I have thought about a lot, many times over a period of many years. And I still think about it to this day. It's not something that we've ever done, or I've never even really explored it in any amount of depth. I mean, I've researched it online. I've never engaged any formal real estate professional to help me think about it. So yeah, we haven't done it, but it is something I've given a lot of thought to.
Interesting. Good. And one thing for owners to know is I have this conversation quite frequently. I've actually had it twice this week, once today and once Monday. It's Thursday now, but talking about if an owner wants to kind of exit their business, but they also own the real estate, you don't have to think about those two things together. In auto service, let's just say a piece of real estate's worth $3 million. If you were to exit the business to a kind of a national creditworthy tenant, for example, the cap rate on that real estate would maybe drop from 8% to 6 or 7%. And thus the value of that real estate goes up, and an owner could think about selling that now to a real estate investment trust or doing a 1031 exchange to somebody, to those groups that wouldn't previously be interested. But because a national tenant now owns the business and is leasing the space, that property value goes up. So, like I said a few minutes ago, some of the wealthiest, and most successful automotive service owners, own their real estate. So great to see you're well positioned kind of across the portfolio. So well done there. I think one in kind of getting back to the operational section of things, obviously managing 10 locations is probably pretty difficult. What mechanisms are in place to make Point Spring successful and having the company run in sync versus kind of each of their own business units?
Yeah, it's a trade-off. So I mean, number one, it's the people. I mean, it's the people at every level. So the upper management needs to be extremely strong. The branch manager position at every location is absolutely critical. And even the supporting staff, if you don't have enough of the right people, the location can suffer and sometimes go under. So it really is about having the right people that have the knowledge, that have, the commitment to the company, that believe in the mission, want to do right by the customers. I'd say the people is 80 to 90% of it. And then the rest of it is also difficult, but it's the processes, it's the constant training, it's the how do you make a 10 location company even approaching something like a McDonald's where everything's repeatable, everything is documented. We try our best. We're certainly not as good as them, but that's the goal, is to be like a professional organization and document things and train, all that kind of stuff.
And I've talked about middle management a good amount on this podcast. Do you have, between the branch managers managing each location and yourself, do you have a GM between both of you guys, or are you the GM?
Now we have a vice president of operations, okay, who he oversees all of the branch managers, all the purchasing, all of the logistics for the company. He's been with us almost 40 years, 35 years. He started as a delivery driver. He's done almost literally every position in the company, and he's worked his way up, and he's one of the strongest members on our team.
That's excellent. So from I guess a lot of the time you spend a lot of your time on kind of steering the company strategically while he's managing kind of each of the branch managers and the overall operation. Tell us about how you've kind of been able to maybe learn how to take a step back and kind of guide the company at a very high level from an executive standpoint.
Yeah. I was kind of thrown into this. I mean, I always knew I wanted to work here. And I've been here 13 years. My dad passed away a lot sooner than I think any of us, wanted him to. He was in his late 60s, so it wasn't like totally premature, but certainly, unexpected, and we didn't plan for that. So I definitely had a lot to learn about, presiding over the whole company. And probably the thing I underestimated the most is just how important the culture is. I mean, it's if something is bothering one or more people and it doesn't get addressed, it doesn't go away. It festers, it gets worse, and it spreads. That was a really hard lesson for me to learn, and I learned it. And I feel like the last 2 years we've been on really, really strong footing, and everybody's aligned, from, like I said, from the senior leaders to the majority. Everybody I talk to at this point seems to be on a good footing with us. So culture was the biggest thing I've kind of taken as I used to almost think it was like like a fluff type of thing, but I really am a believer that it's critically important at this point.
Are you able to share kind of what that cultural challenge was, or do you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, I mean, it was several things all at the same time. My dad was a very inspirational leader for the company. Very inspirational leader. The joke that people like to tell about him was, he could go to a location and he would tell them, "Hey guys, I need you to run into this wall until it falls over." And then when he would leave, everyone would get excited and say, "Wow, we get to run into this wall until it falls over." He was just kind of one of those guys. So him passing affected, the company more than I thought it would. We had we were going through a business system change. We were on an old system and we moved to the Odoo. That was 12 months of agony that really stressed the organization. And we also had a couple year period where we didn't have strong leadership on the finance team, and we didn't have good financials. We didn't have tight numbers, and that impacted everybody, the operations. I mean, it was these three things kind of combined, and it definitely did a number on the culture. Once we fixed it, Odoo's working great now. We have a great new control, not new, our controller's been with us a year and a half. He's got everything caught up, and really taking the time to focus on the culture. It's been like I said, a good couple of years.
Good. And I missed that last piece from you because you kind of froze up a little bit. Did you say financial, something along the lines of like financial clarity or just financial efficiency within the organization?
Yeah, we had a 2-year period where we didn't have strong financial leadership. So our financial statements were 6 months behind. Our collections efforts were a mess. I mean, it was just a mess. And that, again, like I underestimated how big of an issue that would be for the operations, but it's hard to operate a business if you don't know what the numbers are. So that was very challenging.
Yeah. And, especially some of these businesses in this space are still paper-based, and it's kind of a mess from that standpoint. I have one of my clients in the heavy duty space, their numbers at the end of every month, they're ready on the 5th, roughly. I have some other folks that it's the 15th or it's the 20th, but it's if they're ready sooner, you understand how organized an organization is. You understand that you can report back to your branch managers pretty quickly after that month in and course correct. It's just overall, it's a more transparent, driven organization, which contributes to the success overall. So yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for going into detail there. If a lot of these owners, as you know, probably better than I do in this space, a lot of them are looking to grow, whether that's like, a group like Merck's Truck and Trailer that's adding on, or, of course, your big ones like Fleet Pride, and then everybody in the middle, kind of like the true north size. If you have an individual kind of owner like yourself in a different part of the country, how would you, if they're looking for advice, whether leasing or buying real estate, what would you say? What would be your angle?
Frankly, it's served us well to own the real estate. Now, I know that kind of flies in the face of the conventional wisdom for the big companies, for the private equity, Fleet Pride. They don't own hardly any real estate, if any. So we're on the opposite side of the spectrum, but it's really served us well. It's given us, like I said, the flexibility to control our own destiny. It's helped us with, our banking relationship, having that real estate. And we're also a little bit unique that we don't have a separate real estate company. The Point Spring actually owns the real estate, in the company. So, that's a lot of equity that we can, the banks can kind of rely on. So that's been super helpful. So, if you put a gun to my head, I would say I really don't know if it's the right answer, but it's worked well for us. So, I can't say I don't recommend it.
It's hard to go wrong when you invest in an appreciating asset and your business is cash flowing, right? And you can still continue to grow. So I think that's very helpful. Sean, we look forward to finishing out the 100th year and watching your success here and getting to year 125 here over the next bit. And, congratulations. And thank you again for hopping on today. Well done. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.